Hello guys and welcome again to my channel. So I'm so sorry that I am in my clothes at home. So first and foremost, I would like to address that there is poor lighting in my room. But at least you can see whatever it is that I'm going to write in the board. So that's the most important one. So I'll go directly to the point. I'm here to discuss all about the earnings per share. Earnings per share. So this is computational in nature. However, before we start the computation for the earnings per share, let me tell you about the meaning of this earnings per share. Okay? So, earnings per share is actually your share in the net income of the corporation. So, for example, if there is a net income, of course, if you are a shareholder, an ordinary shareholder, for example, so you will have a share in this net income. So, from the word earnings per share, earnings comes from the net income. And of course, if for example there are 1 million net income, there is 1 million net income of a corporation, and then you have one share. So that 1 million, if ever there are also 1 million shares outstanding to shareholders, however, in this 1 million shares, you only have one share. So 1 million divided by 1 million, the earnings per share is 1. Let's call it $1. So what does it mean? If you have one share and the net income is 1 million of the corporation, then you only have $1. Okay? So, meaning the higher the earnings per share or the EPS, the better. It is more attractive in the potential investors. Because, for example, if this is $10 per share, that is more attractive than this 1 per share. Okay? So, again, the earnings per share is just answering the question, how much share do you have in the net income of the corporation if you have one share? Okay? Now, let's proceed to how to compute the earnings per share. Let me check if it's still recording. So, in order to compute the earnings per share, there is what do we call a fraction that you're gonna use in order to get the earnings per share. So, of course, from here we have the net income over number of shares. However, these are not just simple net income and simple number of shares. Actually, this net income is actually NIAUS, net income available for ordinary shareholders only. So, what does that mean? That means if you have a net income, you cannot immediately give that to the ordinary shareholders because there are different types of shareholders in a certain corporation. So if you are part of the ordinary shareholders, there are also owners or shareholders which owns preference shares. Preference shares. So, for example, the par value of the preference shares is 2 million. So, these preference shares are actually the ones preferred if ever there is a net income. Normally, that's the case. So, for example, if there is a net income of 1 million, normally this preference shares has a percentage like that one. So, that is a characteristic of a debt. However, in these preference shares, the investors of that or those that bought the preference shares, they cannot get their money back just like a debt. If you extend a credit, the investors, if they're going to extend a credit to you, they will have this percentage known as interest rate. And of course, after 5 years or so, there is a maturity term wherein those investors can get back their money, the principal of the money. Okay? In preference shares, there's no such thing as a maturity term. So meaning, if for example, you sold this 2 million to investors, these preference shares, then that 2 million that you sold to the investors, you are getting money from them. They cannot get it back. after a maturity term because investing in shares do not have any maturity term. Okay? So, this is the only one similar. The percentage is the only one similar to debt. Okay? So, what does this mean? If ever there is a percentage, in the ordinary shares, there is no percentage like this. So, this percentage, if it is to be applied on the par value, so that's 10% times 2 million, that is 200,000. That means that the preference shareholders would get 200,000 per year supposedly if there is a net income also. So if, for example, the net income is 1 million and they are to get 200,000 per year, so the 800,000 will go to the ordinary shareholders. So that's NIAUS, the net income available for ordinary shareholders. Okay? So that means net income minus the preference shareholders' dividends, then that's net income available for ordinary shareholders. But it's not that easy because these preference shareholders are actually having some characteristics, like for example, cumulative. So what is the meaning of cumulative preference shares versus non-cumulative? So if the preference shares are cumulative, as you can see here, they are entitled to have 200,000 per year. So if, for example, in year 1, there is no dividends that were given to the preference shareholders because the preference shareholders dividends are still at the hands or at the decision of the board of directors. The board of directors should announce if there are dividends. So supposedly on year 1, there is no dividends for the preference shareholders. So what will happen if these preference shares are cumulative? So on year 1, there's no dividends. On year 2, if there are dividends that are to be given to the shareholders, then the preference shareholders will receive 200,000 for year 1 and 200,000 for year 2. So it accumulates. That is why it's called cumulative. Okay? But in case of earnings per share, what we're talking about is the net income currently. So if this 1 million is for year 2, then even if the preference shareholders are cumulative, they are only gonna get 200,000 even if in the past years they have dividends in arrears or dividends that are unpaid. So supposedly, today is year 3. So there are no dividends in year 1, there are no dividends in year 2, but there is a dividend declaration in year 3. So supposedly, the preference shareholders should receive 200,000 in year 1, 200,000 in year 2, 200,000 in year 3. So supposedly, they're gonna get in year 3 600,000. In computing earnings per share, it's not the case. What you will do is just deduct 200,000 from the current net income. Why? It is because we're talking only about the net income for year 3. So, the net income for year 3 is only 1 million. So, since we're talking about the net income for year 3 only, they should only get 1 year worth of their dividends. So, that's only 200,000. So, the other 200,000 in the past years, year 1 and year 2, which were not received by the preference shareholders, will be charged also on the net income on year 1 and year 2. Okay? So, the net income in year 3 should not shoulder the whole 600,000, the 200,000 in year 1, 200,000 in year 2, until year 3. Because there are also net income in the past 2 years. Okay? So, even if in the problem there are dividends in arrears for cumulative preference shares, of course, you don't consider those dividends in arrears. You only consider their share for the current year. Okay? So, that's 200,000. So, how is it very different from non-cumulative? Non-cumulative, that means if ever there is no payment on year 1, there is no payment on year 2, what will happen is um, they're not gonna get anything from that year 1 and year 2. only on the years that there is dividend declaration that they're gonna get 200,000. Okay? Now, on the cumulative side also, if the preference shares are cumulative, they don't need any dividend declaration to get a share. So meaning, if in the problem it states that the net income is 1 million, there are preference shares with a par value of 2 million with a rate of 10%. Those are cumulative. So there is no dividend declaration if the preference shares are cumulative. Even if there is no dividend declaration, the preference shareholders could get that 200,000. Okay? So that's the difference. And if this is non-cumulative in nature, it's dependent upon dividend declaration. So meaning, if there is 1 million share, 1 million net income for this year 3, for example, and there are preference shares with a par value of 2 million, with 10%, that's 200,000. And then, it is explicitly stated in the problem that there is no dividend declaration by the board of directors. Then, preference shareholders will have no, what do you call this? Will have no share on the net income. The whole 1 million will go to the ordinary shareholders, and the whole 1 million will be considered net income available for ordinary shareholders. Okay? So, that's the beauty of this cumulative because it's not dependent on the board of directors dividend declaration. Okay? And another thing, as a note, you have to take note that if the problem is silent as to if there is a dividend declaration or not, you have to assume that there is. Okay? There is a dividend declaration if it is silent in the problem. So meaning, if this is non-cumulative and the problem is silent, there will be 200,000 for the preference shareholders. Okay? So, that's it for the cumulative. And I have to tell you about participating, although that is not so much necessary here in the earnings per share. There are participating preference shares. So, on the participating preference shares, supposedly, in our example, the net income is 1 million. For example, the preference shares are cumulative in nature, so automatic there will be 200,000 share. That's 10% times 2 million. So, supposedly the 800,000 will go directly to the ordinary shareholders, and that will become the numerator. Sometimes, if the preference shares are participating, then that means they are also going to participate in this 800,000. So, how do we do that? How do we divide the 800,000 so preference shares and ordinary shares? So this 800,000, if it is still to be divided on preference shares, because aside from being cumulative, this is also participating. The first thing that you should do is get the par value also of the ordinary shares. So, for example, the ordinary shares is how much? The ordinary shares, for example, is 3 million. Okay. So, there is no percentage on the ordinary shares. So, we're talking about ordinary shares at their par value. So, 1 million, based on the cumulative aspect of the preference shares, we have deducted 200,000. So, this is satisfied already. But since the preference shares are also participating, they are going to participate here. But before they participate here, the ordinary shares, because it is unfair already, because they are already given 200,000, the preference shareholders, since that is unfair, the ordinary shares will also copy the percentage of the preference shares as if. So meaning, before dividing the 800,000 to preference shares and ordinary shares, the ordinary shares will copy the 10%. So 10% times the par value of the ordinary shares, the 300,000 will go to the ordinary shares. So this is on the preference shares. This will be on the ordinary shares. So 800 minus 300, we have 500,000. So this is the ones that will be subdivided into preference shares and ordinary shares again. So how do we divide this 500,000? We're going to divide the 500,000 based on the ratio of the par values of ordinary shares and preference shares. So the total of this one is 5 million. So that means 3 out of 5 will go to the ordinary shares, while 2 out of 5 will go to the preference shares. And if that is the case, ordinary shares will have 5 million, 500,000 times 3 over 5 or 60%. So how much is 60% of this one? So 50% is 250. 3 over 5 is actually 60%, I guess. Yes, that's 60%. So 250, 300,000 will go to the ordinary shares, and the 200,000 will go to the preference shares. So all in all, the ordinary shares will have 300,000, and the other 300,000, which was derived a while ago, when the ordinary shares copied the percentage of the preference shares and multiplied it with par. So in this particular case, you have 300,000 plus 300,000. The NIAUS is 600,000. So that's the meaning of cumulative and participating. Cumulative preference shares will receive dividends in arrears in the future, and they don't really rely on the dividend declaration of the board of directors. However, the as part of the computation, you cannot add all the dividends in arrears. You can only have one maximum year of dividends to be given to them. Okay? So that's cumulative. And then on the participating, supposedly, if there is a net income and the preference shareholders have already been given their share of dividends, whether or not they're cumulative or non-cumulative, for 1 year, so the remainder should have been given immediately to the ordinary shares. However, since it is participating, then the preference shares will also share on the remainder. But before sharing that, of course, the ordinary shares, to be fair, will copy the percentage of the preference shares that are already participating, and they will also have a dividend, 10% times the par value of ordinary shares. They're gonna get that, and the remainder will be the ones that will be divided between preference shares and ordinary shares based on the ratio of their par values. So par values only, okay? The percentage are applicable to par values. You do not include the ordinary share capital share premium. You do not include the preference share capital share premium account. Okay? So if that is clear, then we're already through with the net income available for ordinary shareholders. Now, let's talk about the denominator. This is not just a normal number of shares outstanding, but instead, this is average number of shares. So how do you compute the average number of shares? Like for example, on January 1, 20x1, you have issued 100,000 shares. So there will be a weight that will be given to this 100,000, and that is 12 over 12. And the reason behind is that since it is assumed that every year end is on calendar year 12/31, that's the year end. So from 1/1/20x1 to 12/31/20x1, the shares, of course, when you issue shares, you are given money, right, from the investors. So the money given by the investors because they bought 100,000 shares was used for 12 months. So it's better that you use this 12 over 12. Okay? So, for example, on 7/1, 20x1, you have sold another 100,000. So, this 100,000 is not the same with this 100,000. Because again, if you issue shares, you're gonna receive money from the investors And such money has only been used 6/12 or one half of the year, 6 months only, because 7/120x1 to 12/31/20x1 is 6 months. So the weight is only 50,000. So if that is the whole movement of your issuance of shares, so 100 plus 50, 150,000. So that's how you get the average number of shares. Okay? So you're gonna have this. So if you're not going to average it, then I guess, for me, averaging the number of shares is actually more fair and justifiable. It is because if ever you're one of those shareholders who have gotten your shares on 7120x1, you should have lesser share, which is here we have 100, here we have 50,000. So your credit is only 50,000 even though you have purchased 100,000. That's fair because again, when you issue shares, you get money from the investors in the point of view of the corporation. In here, those who bought these shares on 7120x1, their money was only used for 6/12. Okay? Now, here's the twist. In order to get the average number of shares, sometimes there are twists. Like for example, share split. Share split, what do we mean by share split? Share split happens, like for example, the share split is 2 times. The share split actually is just, for example, we have 3 million here and the par there is 30, and then you have 100,000. I guess that's 100,000 times 30 is 3 million. If we're going to subject this to share split 2 times, that means the number of shares will be multiplied by 2. It will become 200,000, whereas the par value will become 15 because this 30 has been divided by 2. So what will happen is from 100,000 and 30 par value, it's 3 million. It will become 200,000 times 15, which is still 3 million. Okay, so that's the meaning of share split. Of course, the opposite is also true. We have also share split down. If share split down 2 times, what will happen is from 100,000, it will become 50,000 shares. And then from 30, it will become 60. But still, 50,000 times 60 is still 3 million. So there is no change actually on the amount. Only the multiplication of your number of shares and the division on your par value if shares split up. And if it is split down, the number of shares will be divided by 2, the par value will be multiplied by 2, but still, the value will still be 3 million. Okay? But the question is, how does this affect the average number of shares? So if there is a share split, let's say for example, share split 2 times, here, before you can be able to average this 100,000, you have to effect this share split 2 times. So meaning, this will become 200,000. So, what will be affected by the share split are the previous, for example, this is 3120x1, are the previous share transactions. So, it will not affect those share issuances after this date. So, since the share split happened on 3120x1, it will not affect the 7120x1 because it already happened after the share split date. Okay? So, it will affect only the previously issued shares. Okay? Now, there is also, aside from the share split, there is also what do we call as stock dividend. Stock dividend or share dividend. For example, there is a share dividend of 20%. So that means, what is the meaning of share dividend? You will be given extra shares. Like for example, if you have 100,000 shares, you'll be given additional 20,000 shares. So that's the meaning of that. And of course, the same with the share split, it affects those previously issued shares before they can be multiplied to the weights. And for example, this is 10-1 already. 10-1, 20x1. So before you do this, these fractions here, so the 20% will affect this one. So this will become, instead of 100,000, it will become 120,000 because 20% was added. And of course, this 20% will also affect this. Okay? Again, earlier, we have already affected the share split 2 times. It became 200,000. It's not enough because it will be affected also by the stock or share dividend of 20%. So how much is the 20% of this? I guess it's 40,000. So it will become 240,000 already before you multiply it with its weights. So that's the effect of the share split 2 times and the stock dividend 20%. And if ever that happens, this will become 240 and this will become 60,000 and this will become 300,000 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it will become 300,000. Okay, so that's what you're going to put right here. So based on our examples earlier, so you have the net income available for ordinary shareholders. From 1 million, you deducted the share of the preference shares of 200,000 because it's cumulative. And since it is also participating, first you have deducted the ordinary share dividend, copying the 10% from here times the par value, that's 300. It will go to the ordinary shares. And the 500,000 is divided into preference shares and ordinary shares based on the ratio of their par values. So we have 300 for the ordinary shares and another 300 as a share of ordinary shareholders from this 500,000. So we have 600,000 as the net income available for ordinary shareholders. So 600 divided by 300,000, we have earnings per share of 2. For example, $2. So that's it. So that means every share that you own in the company, you will have a share on the net income of $2. So if ever you have 100,000 shares, so 100,000 shares times 2, that's your share on the net income of the company. So on the next episode, let's talk about the diluted earnings per share. So the diluted earnings per share, from the word diluted, we will try to minimize the earnings per share. We're gonna try to decrease this earnings per share. So that's diluted earnings per share. Mathematically, in order for the earnings per share to become lower, you could increase the denominator, the average number of shares, or you can decrease the net income available for ordinary shareholders. So how do we do that? Let's talk about that on the next episode. But I'll give you a hint. There are potential shares. Potential shares, they are not yet ordinary shares issued. Potential ordinary shares only. So those potential ordinary shares, we're going to force it to become ordinary shares so that this average number of shares here will increase. And if it will increase, the earnings per share will be diluted or will be decreased. So imagine if 600,000 and then we can raise this number of shares also to 600. So from 300, it becomes 600. Of course, the earnings per share will dilute. It will become $1. So this is our focus on the next meeting or in the next class, in the next video. We are going to try to dilute the earnings per share by converting forcefully as if the potential ordinary shares. Okay? Of course, there are some effects also on the net income available for ordinary shareholders, but that's on the next episode. So thank you for watching. See you on the next one.